I wasn't gonna do this, I'm sure you get that a lot. You mentioned the small struggle and reading this stuff out loud, when it's grammatically foobar. So I read this to myself a couple times in case you share. Now that I appreciate, thank you for that. I found solace in hearing so many stories similar to my own, and I turned the page. At least I thought I'd turn the page. The truth is, I was not at peace. The negative impact on my life for no known reasons were immense within the last 2 years. If it weren't for a good wife, I don't know what shape I'd be in. Dude, I turned into a hard boozer for a stint, while trying to get my head straight after one particular incident. That's not me. I've since kicked it. I don't know how to keep this short, so I'm not going to try very hard to shorten it up. I have a pretty big chest, dude. My friends back home call me the vanilla gorilla. At 5'10" and 315 pounds, I'm not scared of any man. I'm not trying to sound cocky, but I spend my whole life getting bigger, faster, and stronger in the woods. I grew up rolling boulders down the mountain with friends, just to test ourselves. My size and strength will come into play later. I was a registered strongman competitor in Pa. I was raised in the southern tier region of New York State, where it meets the northern tier region of Pa. This is good country, really rich forest and beautiful mountains, that you'd probably call hills considering where you live. But there's a wonderfully large amount of territory here with sparsely populated areas of people here. There are hundreds or thousands of acres, and some of it gets very rough. We went to the mountains for deer, and took a turkey on the river flats. Beautiful waterfalls right next to the dinky trailer lived in at the base of a mountain. Our high school football rivals would only graduate around 60 kids a year on average, up until a year and a half ago. I spent more time in the woods alone at night than anyone I know personally. I know Pennsylvania and what's in it. There is no bumbling bear, running deer, rabbit cry, squirrel fart, or owl screech that could shake me, because I'm in tune with what people typically know are out here. Over the course the last 2 years, I slowly realized I might not be the baddest ass thing in the woods here. In fact, I was flat out wrong. I didn't know that until I moved. I moved to the southeast area of Pennsylvania for work. Down here is much more populated. I can't stand that I'm a welder fabricated by trade. I became a foreman in the decent-sized shop from 226 Danish until the mandated shutdowns a few months back. I'd lost myself and work for the first couple years and became fairly obsessed with the 75 to 90 hour work week. Every week I regulated my own time, so there's nobody telling me to go home. That's my personality. If you're going to do something, then you better not quit until you're an empty tank. Mine was getting low after a couple years. I need to get outside and reconnect a bit on weekends. At least I'm lucky enough to live right next to several state parks. One is less than 2 miles away. Hell yeah, I love fishing, and I started slaunch hunting hard again. I don't want any 3-pounders though, I want the she-piggies, the lunkers. This means trial and error, and different methods of precise moments. Weather is a massive part of this process, as you well know. I started to find the big gills hit later, and they wanted top water. I mean between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. at this one particular area. Sure, I could get decent fish all day with a Texas rig or a frog, but true slump donkey bites at night on a buzzbait or whopper plopper. I was doing this all year round for almost 2 straight years. I'll send you a list of details. I'd rather you kept yourself in the event that you read all this and share any at all. You can share anything you want, if you like, but I don't have any physical proof. All this stuff eventually lead me to this research. If you don't respond to me, I think I'll feel better the second I hit send anyway. I don't know why I feel that way, but I do. It reminds me of the same human aspect when you talked about how people who won't speak about something right after happens is like the other end of the same spectrum regarding human nature. Backstory complete. If you need more information, just ask, I'll help if I can. As you read the incidents themselves, you need to keep in mind that I didn't have any energy of interest in Sasquatch or the tendencies like throwing crap, the screaming, the hush talking, the stalking, etc. If I knew 2 years ago what I know now, I would have reacted to these things very differently or been able to avoid it entirely. Isn't that what this is also about though? Educating and destigmatizing this ship. I'll spare theatrics as much as possible for these since it's already drawn out here. It goes. Incident number 1, the splash. Saturday night approximately 8:30 p.m. in the fall of 2018, the last people in the entire lake area from the boarders to hikers in the parking lot had cleared out about an hour and a half prior. I was ripping a newest buzzbait for top water, and jerking with a new underwater jig called a rage blade. Since I always bring 2 rods, it makes a lot of noise underwater, and it's easy for the bass to find when combined with a soft stinky creature bait trailer. When I think back, I realized the woods were dead silent, not a peep besides my buzzbait. I probably chalked it up to that time of year. Everything was holding me down for winter. The splash could have been anything other than a small boulder, not a rock like the 200 to 300 pounders I was lifting. I'll lift and throw these damn things for exercise and fun, so I know what it takes. This thing must have been chucked from the top of the dike, because there weren't any loose rocks on the far side of the cove I was in, and I didn't hear anything moving anywhere near me. Nothing. That means it was walked over to that point or launched from that 50 yards or more. Nothing can do that, right? You need a GD tree butthead. I know full well that even a deer can sound like a hippo when it hops through the water in the dark. I've heard it many times when they get spooked and dart across the stream. The area the splash came from was also one of the deepest areas of the lake, with a steep drop-off. Splash isn't even the word you should use for the deep water wave sound that only comes from a massive disruption of water surface by something far denser than the water or tree limbs. We've all heard a big rock fall in the water and the satisfying bellow it makes before the time of the rock surface of the water, and for a split second pushes the surface down below the surface plane, and when the rock finally breaks through the surface of water, and water envelops the top of the rock with a watery crash. It sounds dumb as hell to break it down that far, but think about it. Picture this. I've had a lot of time to think about it. I went as far as watching video specials about water displacement. Hear it in your head, multiply that by epping 100, I shit you not. If you actually heard the sound, you would hear this kind of splash before you'd not recognize it as anything normal. It was too immense. It was a deep groan from the water that lasted forever, because of how much water it must have pushed aside by the boulder that hid it. But loose and I was zapping out of there. The crazy part, why did I run so instantaneously? I didn't even know there was something there I should be afraid of, and I naturally ripped my lure out of the water. I didn't reel it in, I ripped that thing off the water in one whip. And somehow caught the thing like a ninja. I was instantly hiding somewhat at that moment. I grabbed my tackle bag and second pole with one movement, and went through the woods to my truck so fast. I heard nothing but the wind across my ears. I got in the truck, chucked my bag and tangled messes in the back, started up and turned the lights on in one fluid move, and slammed it in reverse only to correct it for in the direction I came from so I could see the tree line and splash direction. Why? Because of instincts that I wouldn't know I wasn't acknowledging. At that point I understood my fight instincts. Well, there's a different one entirely, and thank God is powerful enough to take over my so-called logical processes. When I didn't know what was happening, I didn't understand that feeling for quite a few incidents. If I'm being honest, it's alarming how much we basically devolved to a point we could almost totally ignore our basic instincts. And that is a fact that is a piss off to me. That's something I think about a lot, is how we have been dumbed down right from our natural skills. I believe you caught the sixth sense, or simply your gut telling you something. I remember taking a Snapchat about it, saying it to my siblings. The younger ones convinced me to get the app so we can all stay connected. I'm in the middle of 6 kids and we are all in a close-knit family. I sent to Snap myself, pretty much making fun of myself. For the whole thing at this point in time I knew what I heard. What I should have been asking was why and how. Incident number 2, lights, whispers and motors. I still went to the lake at night regularly. My wife would go with me for catfish often enough to call her an awesome wife. But not near as often as I was going. I got obsessed when with evening fishing for donkers, and it was well worth it to go a week or more of nothing, and then pull out a 6-pounder. I was going after working almost every weekend. I felt alive again, and I'm not too proud to say that. Ego has a bit to do with it. What an awesome thing to banter about and hold over the heads of your brothers and friends during a time of year that even the most dedicated anglers are only fishing for Black Friday bargains. This is where things start to meld together. And I didn't even realize it. If you want to hear more about the lights and detail, it can be a separate email. I'm only mentioning it because, even though I'm new to this topic in general, it seems a lot of circles associate these bright orb buggers to Sasquatch, and I don't know enough to make my own assumptions there. At least I know enough to know I don't know. Maybe it's something you can elaborate on in a video. I'd love to hear what you think. Anyway, if I saw a light in the sky and I thought it was odd and started to record what I could since it became frequent. I didn't know if I was a hotspot for these things or if it's just from being near wide open sky at night. Like when you're on a lake. Anyone that went fishing with me there saw them as well, and there's no denying them since I found local reports about them from time to time on YouTube. If nothing else, it was fun stuff to pass the time between me and my son. Who doesn't love to just look up the beautiful night sky? Anyway, right After a while I stopped filming these things because I started to hear what I assumed were whispers, and sometimes straight up hushed voices. Some nights I cannot ever tell what they were saying. It was like listening to Charlie Brown's teacher. You knew there was conversation, but for some reason you just can't make the words out. Looking back, I think I stopped recording the lights just so I could pay more attention to the unsettling idea that a group of people wanted to, dare I say, spy on me. For a bit I chalked it up to people night fishing for caddies, since it was a good spot for it. The issue was always from the far side in the park. As time went on, it was more unsettling, because the park is not open to campers from October to spring. Gates lock every night at dusk, no vehicles in the parking lot on my side. 4 hours if at all by the time I started hearing stuff. The weird part is that if people were over there, would meant they hiked in from a ways away. Not an odd concept, but you're not allowed to be in there anyway. Even if they hiked infrequently, I knew a shortcut. There was no reason for it. Everyone knew where the channel cats and the bullheads were, and it was the opposite side of the individuals always seemed to be. So why risk it? It's not like I always took their spot because they have been there before me, or I wouldn't have seen or heard them making their way over there. I even wanted briefly because a couple park rangers had nothing better to do in off hours, and I thought I was nuts or suspicious for always being there at night. Maybe they thought I was up to no good since the parking lot did have issues being in a remote location in between two populated areas. On several occasions I heard what I thought was the motor of a golf cart or a small trail buggy. But starting and stopping again and again. It reminded me of a gas-powered golf cart. How you hit the gas, and the motor turns on, let off the gas and the motor stops again and again. This was the only explanation for the sound I could find for myself at the time. But back home everyone in the neighborhood who had a quad, dirt bike, or well-to-dos had a side-by-side ATV. There is no denying the deep muffled rumble of a motor on off. What the F this contributed to the unlikely spying ranger theory. Because they're the only ones that have a machine like that in there. I talk to the rangers regularly, so I doubt this very much. We had a good relationship and I never asked him about it, because by this point I'm already feeling a bit crazy. This is why I don't realize that these small occurrences are adding up to my uneasy demeanor changing during that time period. When I was there I was straight up paranoid while fishing that spot and trying to make sense of all this. As time goes on, reality only makes you more paranoid because you eventually realize you're being watched. There's no denying that feeling. There was constant sense of alertness when I was there, and it grew so slightly over time. I didn't take my own hints. I believe I was being given hints too. I've seen a dilapidated band parked there running late at night, a homeless druggie living in a van, or maybe a drug dealer's waiting for me to leave. Someone wanting to rob me or break into my truck. Not super common there, but it does happen there. Couldn't be. I would have seen people pull in, and no thug is going to hike miles at night scouting me. And thugs wouldn't scare me because I finished a hell of a lot of fights as a bouncer through college. I wasn't afraid of group scuffles. Just get in there. People don't fight fair and remote places at night either, so I usually had a pistol on me, or in the truck close by. Since I started migrating closer and closer to the truck over time, I now fish much further from the splash spot, for some reason, brave not stupid. This was taking my peace from me, and I began to act out at this point. I can say I was finally on edge. I started saying, "Bastard, back off." Why not? Worst case, if someone asked me what the hell is the problem and I apologized for the misunderstanding, then move on. I often wish that happened with all my heart. The voices just stopped at the first time I shouted. At first I thought that was it, since I called them out. And they didn't respond, like, "I know you're there, idiots. What are you gonna do? Anyway, they can just F off now, right?" "Nope." Whispers come back shortly after, but from further down the way, closer to the dike that lead to my side. "Goodbye, gun or not, I don't need a gun." Like that. I said before that I had no problem handling trouble that came my way. But that doesn't mean I looked for it, or welcomed it. I left. I didn't go back for a couple weeks because I was bugged the hell out. Now I'm a little jumpy away from the lake too. It was now spilling over into the rest of my life. Why would anybody be watching me like that? Is it just there, or I'm always followed, and what the hell for? I'm a different kind for sure, but I'm not quite that interesting. Was it something I filmed? I deleted every damn video I took about that lake, and that wasn't a fish or a friend. I deleted video of lights and anything I thought was weird. And I have no idea why I was still going back to the lights as a factor. Because it seemed at the time the only weird thing going on there, so that's got to be it, right? If I filmed some top secret drones, I don't want to put it out there. You know, don't out your own people, that's the stuff that covers our own assets. This is how bugged out I got after a little while. I was done with that place. I didn't go there for better part of a month. Maybe longer than a month. I thought about the experiences constantly. But there's a stint of odd weather that went to before this last one, when the worst of this is going on. The weather was a rare chance to have some spring. During the summer, I was walking past that 400 medium action rod and bait caster rig in the garage one day, and it was too much for me. It was enough to cloud the issue. It's easy to tell yourself it's not a big deal, and you can handle it. After some time I couldn't stay away. There was a warm front hitting and conditions may be looking good for a small window. I heard the weather was going to turn back and total cold with freezing and rain in a day or so, and that the temp would drop back down. Sounded to me like there'd be base conditions for that small window. Incident 3, help me please, the screaming. I went back to the lake. By this time I figured I'd play it safe as possible. I parked close to where I was fishing. I stayed close to the truck while I fished. I had a sidearm, hot coffee, headlamp, flashlight, lantern, as I stayed far from the tree line. I was practically fishing from the effing parking lot. I set up a catfish rig to throw in while I hit the top water where I thought it'd be best. Obviously the best place in the woods near the cove. But that was out for me. After dark done, I had a line in and I was checking with different rock top water baits. And I heard what I believed to be a blood-curdling, bone-chilling, piercing scream for hell. The strongest sound. Man, I can't explain the power of This voice that cut through the air. It kept going, help me, please help me please. I dropped my pole and rocked the slide before the rod hit the ground. Walked toward the screams behind me. The screams were past the truck across the road, and maybe in the tree line. I had 20 black tops in the magazine plus a spare mag in my pocket. I've always been a bit of adrenaline junkie, so I can embrace the use of that kind of a rush in intense situations, but this was so different, dude. I felt like a cold wind was blowing on my bare bones. While I headed toward that sound, at first I instantly felt like I had to save someone's life. I had to save a woman. It was a woman in distress at first thoughts, and I had to save her from whatever is chasing or attacking her, right? Anyone would, especially me. In fact, this is probably the only epic thing that would get me to set aside my gut fear and caution. Go in the woods there at night to save someone, to save a life. This is probably the only bait I would ever bite on. Are you picking up what I'm throwing down, brother? I charged the tree line hard, but for some reason I stopped dead in my effing tracks at my truck. I can't say that I couldn't move, it was more that I wouldn't move. When I thought about what was happening, something in me knew full well that it wasn't a person, and here's why. It was too loud, it was too sharp, too strong, it resonated in the air in my chest way too hard. It was enough to almost hurt your ears. And it was crushing in general. The sound hurt me somehow, in a way I can't explain. I screamed back, "Where are you?" And the screaming stopped. I started the truck, put the lights on the tree line and got out of the truck to have a listen. Nothing. You couldn't drive a pin in my ass with a 10-pound sledgehammer. At this moment I called the local cops, but they were closed. But I didn't call the state cops because at that point I knew it was an effing bunk call. There was no cry for help, it was a bait call. It was a turkey call, or like using a rabbit box to call in a coyote. This time though I wasn't the one waiting in the dark for something to come in and take the bait. I got in the truck and went home, packed my fishing gear and gun under the corner and hugged my wife. It wasn't worth the terror anymore. Looking back, I'm so glad I left, because from what I've looked into recently tells me that my 9mm wouldn't help much. Even if I had a 40 total rounds of my 2 meds. I don't know if I could have overcome what I believed was there. I only go during the day when the parks are open during the spring and summer, and I carry 357 Magnum with flat nose bullets. Oh yeah, remember the motor sounds? I forgot about those because I've dragged this on. But our brain is a weird thing. Sometimes it finds the closest plausible match for what information is given to process, right? It makes sense of things with the knowledge you have up to that point. That wasn't a motor, man, it was this thing, this being. It was closer than I want to think about, and that was its regular breathing, or that my effort was periodically snarling at me. I've just now begun to act like myself again, and I've kind of tried to bring the topic up with some friends of family, but I can't follow through with it. They do not seem like they will understand. My wife knows it's all real and I don't hide shit from her, and she knows me well. She loves me because she knows she's always safe with me, no matter what, and she's never seen me speak like that. I'm that much more protective when we're in the woods now. And we have some strict rules we stick to in the woods. Processing things we don't do alone anymore. She had no doubts and she was there for me 100%. I spared details with her so she isn't afraid as best I can. I want her to be cautious, not scared, and she's a smart woman. I need to keep getting back to who I am. I'm gonna hit send despite my age. I'm not great with technology, so I hope it goes out okay. I've been tiptoeing around it all week. I can't stop the chills I have right now. I started typing this 4 days ago. I almost shit a brick when I heard yesterday's account of the rock throwing. I had a feeling like I should just delete all this and move on. I had the splash incident typed for 2 days before the Jeremiah guy had the damn near same effing story of his experience. I'll send you some stuff later. I guess you can share everything but my name. There wasn't anything super specific.